it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. LaVita.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Wednesday, December 6th. Thanks, everyone, for watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Tell your friends, share it, like it, please, if you can. This episode, I have a feeling, yes, is going to be sick because it always is with Craig Button of TSN. The Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, LaVita TB, and Playground. Without further ado, let's bring him in. TSN's Director of Scouting, amongst other titles that he has. Craig Button, what's going on?
Not much. I'm sitting in Calgary, and it is just beautiful weather. No snow, like it was 16 degrees yesterday. So it's been a wonder. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it. I like to ski, so there's not a lot of snow in the area, but I guess I'll just have to wait till next year. But things are going good. And the World Junior, 16 days before I depart for the World Junior in Sweden. So that's an exciting time. And certainly some Montreal Canadiens players that are going to be front and center at that tournament.
Or you could make your way to Montreal if you like skiing that much, because I think between Sunday night and Monday night, I think we had something like 30 centimeters here or whatever it is. It's unbelievable. All the cars are like hidden in snow. And if you love skiing, hey, that's a beautiful. It's the Montreal Forum, is it not? Right above
it
you?
Is.
Yeah,
it is. It's. I got it as a birthday present when I was younger, and I have so many great memories of the Montreal Forum, and going there and that picture. To me, Tony, like you think back and it puts a smile on my face thinking about those Saturday nights going to the Montreal Forum. And I didn't get to go that much. That was usually my mother and father's night out to socialize and everything. But on a winter night when and the escalators with the hockey sticks, and you honestly, you knew you were going to the hockey cathedral. You knew, and we see the pictures. I had to wear a tie. To go. I didn't have to wear a jacket, but I had to wear a sweater when I went to the games. That was just what you had to do to enter the Cathedral of Hockey, and it's just a great memory. And these are our season seats. And don't ask me how I ended up with them. My two brothers and my mother have no. I said, well, I didn't take them in the dark of night. Obviously, I ended up with them somehow, some way, and here they are. So I told them. They all live in the East. I said, if you want them, you're happy to come and collect them if it means that much to you. But nobody's taking me up on that.
They will one day when they find out how much they're worth. You'll see the way they come down. What numbers are they?
They are numbers. We were in section 309, number 16 and 15.
16 and 15. All right. Okay.
Réjean Houle, Henri Richard.
Oh man, Henri Richard was such a great player, but there's a real, for me, every time I think of Henri, I think of 11 Stanley Cups, obviously, right? The pocket rocket. But I have a little Henri Richard story for you that I'm doing therapy for. I think I have to try and get over it at one point. So very quickly, I don't know when this was, because I'm not very good with time. I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was. My wife goes to the car wash. And they, at the counter, they're selling lotto tickets. So my wife says, yeah, give me a lotto ticket. And she grabs a Lotto Max where you have to get 7 numbers on 49. So I think she plays $8 worth of tickets. And anyway, that night, the numbers come out. We hit the first one. We hit the second one. We hit the third one. We hit the fourth one. We hit the fifth one. We hit the sixth one. So at the seventh number, we have number 16. And what number comes out? Number 9. There's my Ari Richard pocket rocket Richard story. Yeah, we have number 16 to win $60 million. And now I'm working in radio, making minimum wage at the time, of course. and number 9 comes out, and we have number 16. So anytime somebody tells me about number 16, I have it in my head. And yeah, we didn't hit the bonus number either. It was number 21. That draw, nobody won the $60 million. I think one person won the bonus, which was $400,000 or something like that. And 111 people went 6 for 7. And my wife was one of those. So we won $5,712. My wife has been ecstatic ever since. And I'm like in the biggest depression known to man.
Well, what would have been really cruel is if the winning allotment would have been $5,716.
Yeah, that would have stung even more. You're probably right about that. But anyway, that's my pocket rocket story, even though it's got nothing to do with the rocket or the pocket rocket. Okay. Board of Governors meetings over the past couple of days. We're going to get to that in just a second. But you opened the door for me, actually. Talk to me about the World Juniors and Montreal Canadiens, because, of course, Canadiens fans are watching this and some of their prospects. What are we looking at?
Well, you're looking at, I'm going to mention 3 players that are going to be prominent for their respective countries. You know, Owen Beck returns. I mean, he came in last year as an injury replacement for Kirby Dach's younger brother, Colton Dach, and performed admirably. I mean, he could be the captain of this team. I mean, he's the only returning player from last year's gold medal winning team. And, you know, you watch the maturity of Owen on the ice. You know, he went to the Memorial Cup last year after being traded to Peterborough. He's a complete player. He understands the game in so many different ways and performs at a high standard. And that's what you need in this tournament. It's 10 days. It's 10 days to try to compete for a gold medal. It's not all about who was a first-round draft pick. It's about who can come together as a team. And Owen has been through that successfully in a lot of different iterations, and very well has to be one of the few a small number of players that could captain this Team Canada. Then you go over to Team USA, Lane Hudson. I mean, he was a star last year at the tournament for Team USA, and he's going to be a star again this year. There's no question about it. I mean, he controls the game with the puck. His anticipation, his brain processes at next generation speeds, and the understanding that he has in the game. And anybody playing against Team USA is going to have to know to mark him. Jacob Fowler, I don't think he's going to get a lot of the big games for Team USA. That's going to fall to Trey Augustine, who played last year and has been outstanding this year at Michigan State. And Jacob has been very good at Boston College as well. But the net it will be Trey Augustine's unless something unfortunate happens to Trey, whether it be an injury or he just doesn't perform up to level. But, you know, Jacob will be a real the important part of the goaltending tandem. And then you have Filip Mazar, with Team Slovakia. Team Slovakia returns a lot of really good players. Juraj Slafkovsky is still eligible to play in this tournament. I mean, he's not going to play in this tournament, but this group of the 05s, the 06s, the 04s have been a very good group for Slovakia, and they return a lot of good players to this tournament. And Filip Mazar, having gone through the tournament last year and really understanding, what the level of the tournament is. And he's been terrific in Kitchener this year. And I don't think he'll be any less significant or important for Team Slovakia at the World Juniors. So for the Montreal Canadiens fans, 3 prominent players in Beck, Hudson, and Mazar, wearing their country's flag And I don't think there's any question that they'll be performing at a high level.
Geez, judging from some of the highlights I've seen from Lane Hutson this season, you have to think that this could be his tournament. Am I wrong? Or
well, if you're looking at the tournament, and I think if you're asking me right now to handicap the tournament with respect to best defenseman in the tournament, I would say Lane Hutson and Axel Sandin Pellikka of Sweden headline that group. I mean, Denton Matejchuk, who was a first-round draft pick to Columbus a couple of years ago, certainly would follow. But those two to me are the key cogs on their respective blue lines for Team USA and Team Sweden. But I mean, if you ask me to put a chip down on who is going to be the best defenseman in the tournament, I would put the chip on Lane Hutson.
Owen Beck is could be a coach's dream, right? He's a smart young man. Academically, he's done amazing. When they asked him during the interviews, you're good at faceoffs. Yes. How good are you? Best in the OHL, he said. And so he's a real student of the game. He works very, very hard on his game, but to see what kind of chair is going to be his chair at the National Hockey League level, obviously is going to be very tough because there's a big development stage to go through. But is there a concern about his ability to put up points and manufacture offense?
I don't think there is. I mean, you're not. I don't think that Owen
at the NHL level, of course.
No, yeah, and that's important to distinguish between. I mean, look at Guy Carbonneau. I'm just going to use Guy Carbonneau as an example. He put up 180 points in junior. He put 100 points up in the American Hockey League. He became a great two-way center. I mean, he put up 55 points in the National Hockey League. That's nothing to sneeze at. But it was far off 180 points plus in Chicoutimi in the Quebec League and certainly in Nova Scotia. I mean, Guy has told the story. He said John Brophy told him, he goes, they got a lot of offense up there, Guy. He goes, you're going to have to be better in other areas of the game. And Guy said, okay, what are those? And we know what he did. He's a Hall of Famer. So
yeah,
Owen. So you're not asking Owen to be a point producer. And you talked about a coach's dream. He is a coach's dream because he can do so many, and I call them critically important things in the game that help you win. You talked about the faceoffs. He can kill penalties. He's smart. He knows how to take advantage of situations where he can shut down an opponent offensively and put up his own points. Like, end up on the right side of the ledger with respect to offense because he is so smart. When I go back to this and I think back to the draft and it was the Slafkovsky and there was a lot of talk about Shane Wright and I really like Shane Wright and still do. But once you saw what the Montreal Canadiens did, and I think it's important not to isolate one player. So the Montreal Canadiens said, we're drafting Slafkovsky. I always say, celebrate the player you're drafting, know what you're getting, and move on. And they did. Then they traded for Kirby Dach, a big right shot center. I mean, maybe he's better on the wing. I don't know, but he's a big right shot center. And then with the first pick in the second round, they draft another right shot center in Owen Beck. So now when you look at it, people go, why didn't they draft Shane Wright? Well, wait a second. They get a big, strong winger in Slafkovsky. They trade for a young Kirby Dach, a very talented big center. And then they get Owen Beck, a superb two-way center in the second round. That's the answer why they didn't draft Shane Wright. And those are the things nobody knew. But as it manifested itself through the draft, you look at it and go, that's strengthening your team. So specifically to your question is, I think that Owen will find ways to be very valuable to a team that are outside the statistical summary of goals and assists and points. And, lots of players, put up. Ken Dryden in the book, The Game, talked about Bob Gainey. He said, in a league of do-nothing 20 goal scorers, Bob Gainey is essential to success. Mm-hmm. Owen Beck can be essential to success. He's not a do-nothing offensive player. He's a really well-rounded, important player.
Didn't Victor Tikhonov at one point call Bob Gainey like just the best all-around hockey player in the world?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's a pretty good label to have. Hey, not too shabby. You brought up Philip Michar, who's going to be at the World Juniors. He wasn't overly impressive at camp. I saw him at development camp, and what he does show you is he shows you flashes, right? And so you don't see him, and then all of a sudden you see a rush down the wing, you see a snipe, and you're like, okay, I just saw something. And then you don't see him for a while. So he wasn't overly impressive in terms of a consistency point of view. He goes down to Laval, doesn't quite crack it there in his role, and so they send him down to the Ontario Hockey League. He's ripping it up in the Ontario Hockey League, but ripping it up. But some scouts will look at that and say, I don't put a lot of onus in, overage players picking up points at the junior hockey level. How do you see it?
He's not an overage player. He's 19 years old. He's junior eligible.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to play in the World Junior Tournament if he was an overage player. So he's not an overage player. That's the first thing.
Well, and you know what I mean by that.
But he's 19. He's 19. Yeah. Tony, go through the league and count the 19-year-olds in the league. Okay, this is not a league for 19-year-olds. You got to be really advanced to be able to play in this league at 19 years of age. So he comes to training camp, and you're trying to get a feel for where you're at in terms of your own development. Mm-hmm. And then what you're trying to do is find that consistent level of productivity that's really hard for a 19-year-old. Players evolve and develop at different points in time. We see it continuously. Some are a little bit sooner, some take a little bit longer. Where Philip finds himself right now is absolutely normal. And I would much prefer having a player in my system that's putting up big points at his age level as a 19-year-old, because that's what you would expect from a 19-year-old in junior. Yeah. Kitchener is a really good team. UC Ahokas, a Finnish coach, is an outstanding coach, has worked with a lot of good young players and understands what the path is like. What you have to do with young players is you have to help them understand. So you see those flashes. He's not a first-round draft pick by accident. He has the skills. But what you want to see now, you want to see those flashes get extended. You want to see longer stretches of good, purposeful play. Mm-hmm. You see gaps now. But that's what happens with young players. They just don't understand yet, or they're not quite ready yet to be able to take advantage of that skill on a consistent basis. That's why you got to be patient with them. It takes time. So to me, Philip Méchard comes with a lot of talent and a lot of skills that are coveted. Just let him continue to grow, continue to let him, find his consistent path, and then let's see where he's at. And I'll be straightforward. That's going to come when he's 21 years of age at the earliest. Yeah, it's like Joshua Waugh. Joshua Waugh is an excellent prospect. It's not till next year that we're going to really get a good look at where Joshua Waugh is in terms of his arrival time. And there's arrival time. And he might get games in the NHL. He might get a little stretch of experience and a taste of it. I'm talking about when you arrive, and you can arrive knowing you're ready. That's what that's where we'll see next October of 2024 on Joshua Waugh. And Méchard is 2 years past that, or 2 years past now.
Not an easy thing being a Montreal Canadiens draft pick, because of course the media covering the team is a lot more media than you'll get in most markets, probably with the exception or on the same level as Toronto. So, when Méchard was struggling at one point to make his mark, now he's been off to the races for about 3 or 4 weeks now, but when he was struggling at one point, Kulich came into the Place Bell in Laval, who was drafted a couple of picks later by the Buffalo Sabres, and he lit up the Laval Rocket and scored a hat trick. So a lot of people are looking at Kulich and saying he should have been the pick. So not easy here.
Okay, you're right. Okay, and it never is. And what I would say is, Philip, they've made that decision to draft Philip. Like, you can't go back and unring the bell.
No,
this is where you're at now. You can evaluate after an appropriate amount of time has passed to say, okay, why did we choose this player over that player? And that's part of scouting. That's part of evaluation. It's constant, and you got to do that. But if you're going to evaluate a draft pick just because a player that got drafted after you came in and had a great night, and now you're saying, oh, we should have drafted that player instead, that's not the way you do it. That's not the way scouting works. And I get that media is more intense in Montreal. It doesn't change the development path. I read a quote by Jeff Molson. He goes, "We want to do this the right way. We're not in a rush to get it somewhere before it's ready.
Yeah.
We want to do it the right way, and we're going to be patient." That is the key. I don't care how much media attention there is. It's not going to speed up the development.
Yeah, said it a couple of days ago at the Board of Governors meeting when asked about, if they're going to speed up the rebuild. And he said, no, the rebuild is not a question of speeding it up. It's a question of doing it right. So we're going to take, and how long are you going to take? Some people are growing impatient. Well, there's no timeline on it. We're going to take whatever time it takes to get it right, and we'll continue on the development path that we're going. You said something a couple of minutes ago about some players it takes them longer, some players it takes them less long. Juraj Slafkovsky earlier today at practice, who, by the way, was reunited with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield last game versus the Seattle Kraken. They played together a couple of times now. Last time before that was probably a couple of weeks before that. He had probably his most complete game in the National Hockey League. Didn't pick up any points, but boy, oh boy, did he look comfortable. Slafkovsky, pardon me, asked earlier this morning about, the pressures on young players that are drafted or players that are drafted at first overall, like himself, if we can bring it up.
There is a couple special young players, and now people think that everyone will be like those guys. So it's not always like that, and some guys need more time, some guys need less time, some guys never figure it out, will never figure that out. So yeah, for me, I know what I want at the end of my career. So yeah, I'm trying to do everything every day. So I'll at some point, and when I'm 40 or 50, I'll say, yeah, I did everything I could. I didn't want to change anything what I did on the way there. So.
Two messages there. Translation: hey, not everyone's Crosby, Ovechkin, and McDavid. And number two, everyone relax. Just breathe in, breathe out, and it'll be okay.
You listen to Uri talk there, and you can forget that he's 19 years old. Just the maturity of understanding that, then the ability to articulate that in a second language is beyond impressive. It's beyond impressive, Tony. I don't know what to say. We do it because he's got a sense of what he is. He's got a sense of where he wants to go, and he knows what path it's going to take. And he's right. I've told young players this for years. You're not going to look back on your career when you're 22. You're going to look back on your career when it's over, when you're 40. So work at your career and work at it. You think about the history of the Montreal Canadiens and, the great saying, from failing hands, we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. All those players that were able to, provide guidance. Wouldn't it be nice for Guy Lafleur to still be in our presence, to be able to just talk to Juraj Slafkovsky about, his trials and tribulations? He was 20 when he turned pro. And, and coming into the league in 1971 with Jean Beliveau retiring. I mean, I can't imagine a greater pressure than there was on Guy Lafleur. But it took him 3 years before he really showed the superstar that he became and everybody projected him to be. 23. Uri's a few years away from that. The maturity that he has. And I think it's just fantastic to hear him understand that. He's going to work at it and continue to do it. I was just on the California trip with the Montreal Canadiens.
Mm-hmm.
Uri was beyond impressive. Beyond impressive, where you saw steps being taken forward. Really good, strong steps being taken forward. And I watched the LA game against Columbus on Tuesday night. They're coming into Montreal on Thursday night. And I'll say the same thing. Watch number 55 for the LA Kings, Quinton Byfield. The Kings were patient with him. It took some time. He was in the American Hockey League for a stretch. Quinton Byfield's a really good, solid player, and he's only getting better. And it takes an organization to just say, hang on, we got it. We're going to help you. And as long as the player understands it and is working at it, then you can intersect that. You can come to that intersection where player arrives at that point where he's realizing his potential, and then the team is going to get the benefits of that.
I have the perfect mentor for Juraj Slafkovsky right in the Montreal Canadiens backyard.
Okay.
Vincent Lecavalier, drafted first overall, entered the National Hockey League at 18, had the same size and frame as Uri. Mind you, he was a centerman. When he was drafted, I think his owner back in the day said that we're looking at the next Michael Jordan of hockey. So I know the pressure in Tampa isn't the same as the pressure in Montreal. Obviously, Montreal is more so. But when your owner says this is the next Michael Jordan of hockey, that's a lot of pressure that's put on you. Jacques Demers coaching that team at the time. I believe he had Vinny Lecavalier playing on the third line, eased them in slowly but surely. Vinny Lecavalier, of course, former client of Kent Hughes. Kent brought him on as a special advisor. Here's a guy who's in the Canadiens' backyard. I don't attend every practice. I don't think I've ever seen him on the ice or heard of him being on the ice with Uri. I would imagine they've had some conversations, you would think, but wouldn't that be the perfect mentor for Juraj Slafkovsky?
Yeah, you're right, Tony. I couldn't agree with you more. And, obviously, Vinny, being a first overall pick and understanding the pressures that come with being the first overall pick, because the pressure of being the first overall pick, there's an expectation on you. The expectation is that you're going to be the player that is going to lead us. Usually the team that's picking first overall is terrible. In the case of Guy Lafleur, I mean, Jean Beliveau had just led the Montreal Canadiens to the Stanley Cup and retiring. At the greatest moment a player could retire, still performing at a high level. You're the captain of the team you started with, and you finish with the Stanley Cup. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. I can't think of one. If there is, please let me know.
The series that had that famous trailing 5-1 versus the Boston Bruins in Boston to come back and win that game, I think by a score of 7-5. Was that game 2, I think, of the series? I think it was game 2.
I don't know. There was an 8-7 game in there, I believe. I think I still remember watching game 7 in Chicago at the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah.
When Jacques Lemaire scored from center ice over Tony Esposito. I don't remember a lot when I was 7 years old, but I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember watching the game and thinking, whoa, it was like, anyway. But first overall picks.
Dryden first overall picks. Dryden save on Pappen.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, Dryden save on Esposito and Orr and Hodge and Pappen and all of them to get to that Stanley Cup. I mean, he was brilliant.
Hey, and what I would say is, the chair you have there, I have to bring him up. The Pocket Rockets scored 2 goals in Game 7 versus the Blackhawks in 71.
After Lemaire got him on the board.
Quick story, if I can.
Let me just finish my thought here. First overall picks just real quick. First overall picks can relate to one another, and that becomes important to your suggestion about Vinny Lecavalier being somebody that can be a terrific mentor for your life. No question about it.
You brought me down memory lane now, referring back to 71, because I was born in 72. So I've watched the highlights. They're on YouTube, by the way. They're absolutely fantastic. You can really watch all the highlights of all the games of the 71 Cup run. So my dad came to Canada back in 1967. And he was looking for soccer to watch, but there wasn't much soccer here. There was an establishment in Montreal that would actually show you the second half and only the second half of games back in Europe. So you would go, you'd pay for your entry, you'd watch the second half. But the thing that was on television, of course, were the Montreal Canadiens. So, he picked up the sport pretty quickly because he thought the concepts were rather similar, right? One was 11v11, goalie included, and the other one was 6v6, goalie included. One had a ball and the other one had a puck, and one would kick it and the other one would have a stick and they would shoot it. So anyway, he fell in love with the Montreal Canadiens back then. Who didn't? But so 67 he comes over, but he really falls in love with the Canadiens the year of 71. And where they surprised the hockey world by the Canadiens had a great team. They had a lot of Hall of Famers, but the Boston Bruins were like out of this world good back in 71, right? With a ton of 50-goal scorers and a ton of 100-point players. and they beat the Bruins in 7 in Boston, and then they end up going to the Stanley Cup final, like you said. They beat the Blackhawks. Just to say, my father said back in the day, 71, he and all of his buddies and probably the rest of the city went to the airport to greet the team coming back with the Stanley Cup. And that's the moment where he really became a Montreal Canadiens fan. So there's my little 71 story. Hope I didn't bore you.
No, not at all. I mean, it brings back great memories, and I think back through my high school years. You're in elementary school, Tony. I was in high school, and actually, I had a really good friend. I have a really good friend. He was a diehard Blackhawks fan. He was a diehard because his older brother was quite a bit older than him. He had gone to Lake Forest to play hockey, which was just outside of Chicago. So he looked up to his brother, and he was in Chicago, and he kind of took to the Chicago Blackhawks uniforms and whatnot. Anyway, we used to rib him. We go like, "Hey, we're going to the Stanley Cup party. Is there one in Chicago this year?" And he every year when school would end, there was or near the end of school, there'd be a Stanley Cup party. All those times reminiscing and thinking how lucky we were to grow up with excellence and watching a team perform at the level they did. And, I just watched some clips again the other day of the New Year's Eve game on December 31st, 1975. And, again, I remember watching the game on TV, and, you go back and you watch it now a little bit differently, but it still brings back these wonderful memories. So you think about you think about your dad, you think about your first love for hockey. And then, for you, probably, I'm going to guess, you were 7 in 79, maybe 78, 79, but 86 would have resonated pretty big with you. And that was a special run.
Yeah. The chance of Roy in Madison Square Garden in Game 3, but it didn't get to Patrick Roy. He stood on his head, and the Canadiens won that game. It was Claude Lemieux who scored in overtime to give the Canadiens a 3-0 lead in New York, and they ended up winning that one in 5 versus the Rangers, and then ended up winning the Stanley Cup in 86 when Brian Skrulin scored 9 seconds into overtime, Game 2. I remember that one, and I remember Game 5. I believe they won a game at the Montreal Forum in the final, I think, by a score of 1-0 on a goal by Claude Lemieux. Another one, they may have won 5-2 or 5-3 and a couple of goals by Mats Naslund. And Game 5 in Calgary, they win by a score of 4-1. I'm trying to remember the goal scorers now. I'm going to say Rick Green, Bobby Smith, Gaston Gingras, and I'm trying to remember who scored the other one. I should know this. Bobby Smith, Rick Green.
Was it McPhee?
I'm not sure, but you know what? Agnello Sammy at Master Control, you can help me out here, okay? Game 5, damn, I'm kicking myself for not knowing this. Game 5, Stanley Cup Final, 1986. Canadiens beat the Flames by a score of 4-3. Who were the Montreal Canadiens goal scorers? And now I'm saying Gingras, but I'm wondering if he did. But I remember Rick Green and Bobby Smith for sure. That I remember. Okay. Let's get back now. You said something about Shane Wright before.
Reminiscing.
Yeah, reminiscing is amazing. You said something about Shane Wright. And I think you said he was your pick at the draft. Was he your number 1 pick?
He was, but again, I've said this all the way through. I really thought that Shane was a really good player, but there was no clear cut. It wasn't a Connor Bedard draft.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Connor McDavid draft. It wasn't an Austin Matthews draft. Where it was clear cut. And you certainly, you can say you like this player. And that's why when I talk about what Montreal did, big, strong wingers like Slafkovsky are important to winning. It's important to winning. There's a lot of talk and rightfully so. Tim Stützle is a star in Ottawa. But Quentin Byfield, who went ahead of Stützle, is a really important part of a Stanley Cup contending team in LA.
Yeah.
And Juraj Slafkovsky, you want to win, you need players like Juraj Slafkovsky. So, you understand why. Like the New Jersey Devils were never going to draft Shane Wright or Logan Cooley. even if they thought they would be better, because they had centers, they had Heischer and Hughes. So you understand what teams are trying to do when they're drafting. And certainly, as I said, you draft Slafkovsky, you trade for Doc, you draft Owen Beck, you go, okay, we got this under control.
Yeah. The answers have come in, by the way. I was right about Green, Smith, and Gingras, and the other guy is Brian Skrulin. On an assist.
Screwy scored in game. Okay.
Yeah, on an assist by Mike McPhee and Claude Lemieux, by the way. That line was unbelievable in the playoffs.
Yes, it was.
So you made that clear, and you're right. There was no consensus, but I'm curious. Why not Uri Slafkovsky as your pick for the Montreal Canadiens back then? Because we know he had a tremendous Olympic Games, was very, very good in the World Championships. Was it that you put more an onus on the centerman over the winger, which scouts typically do?
It was. I mean, I really thought what I thought was that Shane Wright could be like Patrice Bergeron. And you know, the admiration for the game that Patrice Bergeron, I mean, he's going in the Hall of Fame in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
20, he retired in 2026. You know, that's the game that I thought Shane had. And I think it's valuable. But it's not so much about Uri Slafkovsky not being a worthwhile pick or a really good pick. I mean, there was one of those situations where you draft Uri Slafkovsky, you're not going wrong. You're getting a big winger. But when you're looking at what you're trying to do to build your team, and again, nobody other than the Montreal Canadiens management had the benefit of knowing that they were going to trade for Kirby Dach, and obviously they had Owen Beck on the brain because they drafted him early in the second round. So you start moving, you get the big winger, you get a big center, big young center in Kirby Dach, you draft Owen Beck. You're not drafting Shane Wright at 1. Because now all you're going to do is logjam. You're just going to logjam yourself. You're not building out a team. Yeah. And so Montreal, to me, did a fantastic job of looking at how they wanted to build out their team.
All right. Speaking of big, and this is a big story right now in Montreal, by the way, regarding a big man, Arber Xhekaj, who was on injured reserve a couple of days ago. They took him off of it, and they sent him down to Laval. And Xhekaj tells reporters he was sent down, and you know what? He's got to work on. He's been told he's got to work on his defensive game. Okay. Here's a guy who came in a year ago, surprised a lot of people. Here's a player who wasn't drafted in the National Hockey League, surprised a lot of people by making this team a year ago out of camp and establishing himself as, you know what, a pretty tough guy in the National Hockey League early on this season. Game 1, as a matter of fact, looks pretty good versus Ryan Reeves. Nicknamed the Sheriff. A lot of people are giving him the championship belt of the National Hockey League already. And here he is. Here's a team that has a lot of small players. You and I talked about it. Nick Suzuki's not big. Cole Caulfield is not big. Alex Newhook is not big. Brendan Gallagher is not big. Harvey Pinard's not big. Now, some of them are out due to injury. But they send them down. Like my buddy George Larac is freaking out right now, right? He's freaking out. He says, the Canadiens are ruining him. They can't do this to him. And what do you make of this situation?
Well, here's the first situation that you got to consider and contemplate. We got to have a night where George and me are on together with you. I really like George. I got lots of time for George because you know what George has? He has experience. Well, he's intelligent. He's got experience. He's got passion. And I love that. I love that. We don't always have to agree with everything that one another says, but you can have a lot of respect. And certainly I have a lot of respect for George. So I think this is where, from George's perspective, he's looking at you don't want your young players and your smaller players to be taken advantage of. And I get that. And that is always understood. Hey, listen, Serge Savard, I remember hearing him say this many years ago. He says, if they have one battleship, you need a battleship. If they have two battleships, you need two battleships. If they have three battleships, you need three battleships. So Sammy Pollock, you think back, we're going to reminisce. So we're going to do a little bit of history lesson here, okay? Like the Montreal Canadiens used to rule the power play. They had great offense. And then teams started to rough them up. And they weren't winning, and teams were taking advantage of their star players. What ended up happening? Sam Pollock says, we can't have that anymore. What's the first thing he did? Oh, he went and signed a young gentleman who was anything but a gentleman on the ice by the name of John Ferguson. Talk about a sheriff. What was it? 8 seconds into his first game, he fights Teddy Green and lost to Bruins. And we all know what John meant to the Montreal Canadiens. And then they went and won. They went and won because – so I fully understand where George is coming from, and I get that. I think that there's a short period of time here where you're just trying to look at trying to get Arber's game back on track, coming back from injury. And Arber's never going to cheat you in effort and determination or passion. But sometimes, I think that he gets some because he wants to be a difference maker. Sometimes you're trying to be a difference maker in ways that are less possible than more possible. So just trying to manage that, whether it be working on your defensive game. I use the term less is more. I think that Arber just has to get – now, that might take a week. That might take 2 weeks. But I believe that that's where Montreal's at. I think everybody knows what Arber means to the Montreal Canadiens and what he brings to the Montreal Canadiens. Listen, I love the guy. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential still there in his game. And I think for the management and for Marty St. Louis, it's just trying to get him, okay, listen, just go there, manage your game, and then everything will be okay. And I do believe that. I think everything will be okay. So fully understand where George is coming from, but let's just give it a little bit of time, and let's just ensure that Arber works at that area, gets a little bit settled, and then carries through.
Everybody loves the guy. It's hard not to love a guy who's all heart and soul and defends his teammates, right? Having said that, the one thing that George brings up, and I can understand George going to bat. First of all, he worked in the offseason with Arber on his pugilistic game. All right. Okay. So he gave him a couple of tips. Number one. Number two, George played the role as a tough guy, a guy to defend his teammates. So obviously he's always going to go to bat for it. And I can appreciate that. Having said that, here's where we respectfully disagree on one thing. And that is this notion that when a tough guy is in your lineup, that other teams are not going to take liberties on some of your other players. Now in 2023, soon to be 2024, I'm not so sure that exists anymore. Like a lot of people were saying, oh, you know what? The Leafs need a tough guy like Ryan Reeves because no one's going to take liberties at Matthews or Marner or Nylander or Tavares or hurt any of their players or check any of their players or go after any of their players. And they're going to be so much more respected and the guys are going to grow a couple of inches. Has he really had that impact in Toronto?
No, in fact, he's had no impact in Toronto. He's had zero impact.
So
I mean, you think about early in the game. Yeah, I get it though, but like Ryan Reeves isn't Arber Xhekaj. Arber Xhekaj can play a lot of minutes in the game. Ryan Reeves can't play minutes in the game.
For sure.
All you got to do is go back to opening night. I mean, Ryan Reeves hits Gooley from behind, and who's right there? Arber Xhekaj. I've seen Toronto Maple Leafs get run. Well, Ryan Reeves is nowhere to be found. No, and I don't say that because he was on the ice. He's not on the ice because they can't put him on the ice. And then when he does come on the ice, nobody on the opposing side is even worried about Ryan Reeves. Play. We're going to score goals on you. I'm going to tell you a story about Brian McGrattan. Brian McGrattan was a tough hombre. He was tough and legitimate tough. And this is what, and I think this is where George can help Arber. He understood it. Yes, you're exactly right, Tony. The game is a little bit different. But players running at your players and trying to get them uncomfortable, it's part of the game. It's part of the game. If you can get a player a little bit off his game by finishing your checks, being a little bit harder on him, that's good. And so what you want to be able to do is be able to return the favor. But there's different ways to do that. Arber can do that because of his play. He can be. It's not just dropping the gloves and fighting. He can do it by being physical against the other team's good players. But Brian McGrattan was playing for the Calgary Flames, and the Vancouver Canucks were a robust team. They played physical, and they were being physical on Jerome McGinley. Well, before a face-off, Brian McGrattan turned to the Vancouver bench, and he looked at the two Sedins. He goes, I don't know who is who there. I can't know. I'm sure your teammates don't even know who is who. He goes, well, I'm just telling you right now. Next guy that runs at Jerome, I'm coming after one of you guys. Turned around and took the face off. because Brian McGrattan knew how to do it. Ryan Reeves, his expiry date has come. He can't do it anymore. So the game is played, and George will tell you, and Tony, you know this. This is nothing that you don't know. The 200 by 85, there's no place to run. There's no place to hide. Everybody on the ice knows who's real, and everybody knows who's not real. And if you don't have players who'll deal with the non-real players, you're going to have problems. And I think that's where George is talking about. The game has changed with respect to the pugilistic and the enforcer as a sole enforcer, but Arber can deliver in significant ways to create what I call an environment that's not comfortable for other players to feel that they can, with impunity, just try to get our best players unsettled.
Put you on the spot here. On a defense core that has a Matheson, a Kovacevic, Jordan Harris, a Jaden Struble, an Arber Xhekaj, a Justin Barron, a Lane Hudson, a couple of years away, a Logan Mailloux at the American Hockey League level. In your opinion,
David Reinbacher, don't forget.
David Reinbacher, you're right. I think he's a couple of years away as well. But in your opinion, because they can't all play here, who is most expendable? Can they pull it off? And if they have to part ways with one or two of them, who's most susceptible to being the odd man out? In your opinion?
I feel like we're doing history here. So I'm going to answer this question with a question, and then I'm going to answer it, because I think it's a multi-level, for me, a multifaceted answer. Who are the big three for the Montreal Canadiens back in the day?
Savard, Lapointe, and Robinson.
Did Butch Bouchard play on those teams?
Yes.
Did Gilles Lupien play on those teams?
Yes.
Unique players. The big three were unique. Who became expendable? Langway became expendable. Engblom became expendable. Those are the players because you have the big three, but you didn't have those other players. Back to the battleship argument. So Arber Xhekaj is unique. There are very few players like him in the NHL. To me, not expendable. So now you look at your next group of players. Matheson and Gooley are not expendable. They're top players. They're top defensemen. They run the show. Justin Barron's a right shot defenseman. He's progressed really nicely. I think Kovacevic. I don't know if the Montreal Canadiens get enough credit for picking him up on waivers and just how solid a player he's been. So it becomes pretty easy for me. You go to the next group of players who's expendable. I think it's pretty obvious. Jaden Struble has come in, and to me, I was just impressed, beyond impressed with how well he played. Jordan Harris is a good player. But these now, when you have good players that can play on the blue line in the NHL, and no NHL team has ever complained about having too many defensemen. Now, this is where Kent Hughes can go and use some of these players to go and acquire. Look, the Montreal Canadiens traded Rod Langway and Doug Jarvis, and what did they get in return? They got Rick Green. Unique player,
and
right?
Ryan
Coming back.
And Ryan
Walter, a big, heavy player, right? So, they knew they had Carbonneau coming. So now, Doug Jarvis became expendable. They knew how good Jarvie was, but he became expendable because of what you were trying to do. That's how you build you build with prospects, good prospects, and then you're able to go and utilize prospects that might not. They're not all going to play for the Montreal Canadiens. Let's be very clear. They're not all going to play for the Montreal. So how are you going to operate to improve your team in other areas by exchanging some of these players? That's what it's all about. And the Montreal Canadiens do not lack any ability to be able to trade good players to address other areas of their team where they might not be as strong.
By the way, I love that, Did the big three play on the Montreal Canadiens? Yes. Who were they? Savard, Lapointe, and Robinson. Did Bouchard play on the Canadiens as well? Yes. Did Lupien play on the Canadiens as well? Yeah. You need players. That's good. Now, because what you're saying is you need players who play different roles. And Arber plays a role. He has a niche. He's got an X factor. He plays a certain role better than others. And if he's gone, who's going to play that role? If you're Arber Xhekaj and you're watching this, I think you're pretty happy right now, right?
I love Arber. I have no, I mean, I watched him in Kitchener, and he'd come to the Montreal Canadiens training camp, and then he had signed, and you're going, geez, that looks like a really good, and I'm asking myself the question, and I get it was COVID, so there's delays and pauses and stoppages, and you're not playing, but they signed him, and then he went to Hamilton, and he became a force. And then, that's where he's at. I mean, his development and his progress has been like this. And I think he can, and maybe it's just, and they want a little bit more. That's okay. That's okay for Arber right now.
Yeah.
Because I know Arber's going to put in the work. I know his determination is not going to fall off. And I think when he returns to the Montreal Canadiens, it'll make a lot of people happy, a lot of the players happy. And I think he'll be, the coach will be happy to see him back there, having found that level of just less is more, just a little bit of less is more. And I think Arber will find that.
All right, let's try and do a little bit of rapid fire because I want to bring up 3 or 4 topics very quickly. Number 1, earlier today at practice for the Canadiens, first wave of the power play, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, Monahan, and Matheson. 4 forwards, 1 D. Matheson's your D. Second wave, Ylönen, Gallagher, Anderson, Dvorak, Barron. Once again, 4 forwards, 1 D. Barron's your D. My question to you is, would Caden Gooley be on your power play?
Yes. I think he's earned an opportunity to play on the power play. When I've watched Caden's really smart with his play. And you're trying to find a balance between creativity and being able to, open up the ice and find the seams and everything. Caden is what I would call really, really strongly functional. He knows where the puck needs to go, and he's going to get it there. And he's going to make the plays that can open up other opportunities. It might not be in a creative way, not that he lacks creativity, but I think it'll be more in a functional way because his timing, he knows when to give up the puck, he knows where to get it to, and I think that becomes really important.
For the first time in, I think, 18 or 19 games or something like that, the same goalie who started last game is going to play next game. So Samuel Montembeault played on Monday. He's playing again on Thursday when the Canadiens host the Los Angeles Kings. Is this a sign to you that the ménage à trois, the 3-goalie system, is nearing an end?
Are you ready for this, Tony? Are you ready for this? The Montreal Canadiens, okay, are a 500 team right now. I think it's fantastic where they're at.
Yeah.
I think at a point in time, you're 25 games into the season, and, that's where teams are at for the most part. You're 25 games into the season. You know what? There comes a time when you got to say, we're rewarding our players for digging in and playing hard. We're rewarding our goaltenders for delivering when we need them to deliver. And at some point in time, you can't just keep saying, well, you know what, it's his turn, and if we win, that's great, but it's more than that. Winning matters in this league, and winning matters for development. So I think it's about that. And if the Montreal Canadiens were 7-18-3, I'd say, okay, maybe they're pushing it.
Yeah.
Not where they're at. I think rewards are just, and I think they're earned. And I think the Montreal Canadiens, I think Montembeault's earned it. I think the Montreal Canadiens as a team have earned it. And I think it's the absolute right thing to do.
In ending, the salary cap going up to about $87.7 million next season. As a guy who's a former general manager in the National Hockey League, what does that mean? How do you prepare for that as a GM?
Well, I was in Calgary. We had a budget, but my salary cap used to go down every year. It never went up. Different era, all kidding aside. I call it the COVID CBA. Escrow was capped. The salary cap was negotiated to work within parameters to address the COVID scenario. That was 4 years. So we saw teams players with contracts and teams that weren't able to take advantage of growing revenues just because of what's happened. It's significant. It's going to help teams. It's, when you can look at the salary cap and know it's going up, you're not thinking of squeezing now. You're thinking of okay, we can expand things and we can keep players, and understanding how that works. I also think it'll work into the trade deadline in a significant way, because I think as players have expiring contracts and the cap is going up next year, and if a team is trading for them, they know legitimately that they can have a real crack at signing them long term. And I think that that's really, really important for a franchise. I'll just use Toronto as an example. Mm-hmm. And, William Nylander's having a fantastic season. He makes $7 million a year. Matthews is going to bump up about $1.5 million next year with his new contract. Yeah. Marner's still where he's at. And, so if the cap is going to go up $4.4 million, $4.5 million, and William Nylander gets 3.5 of that, and now Matthews gets 1.5 of that, well, now you're covered. Now you have to make decisions in other areas. If the cap doesn't go up, I'm not so sure William Nylander is going to be able to stay in Toronto, or they're not going to have to move another player. And that's everywhere in the league. And I'm using the higher end here, but that's for every team in the league. So now there's more value. There's value. You look at a player. Like let's use Ryan O'Reilly. So Toronto trades for him last year. They really knew they had little chance to keep him. Mm-hmm. That might not be the case this year if you're trading for Ryan O'Reilly, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs or other teams, because the cap's going up. So I think it's really important. I will add one more thing. Gary Bettman is a very, very shrewd and smart commissioner, and don't be surprised if the cap goes up a little bit more than he said. But he's not going to go to a higher number. He's going to go to a lower number now with better news potentially for a higher cap number and a higher increase, rather than start at a higher number. That's shrewd. And where you see the league at right now, and you see where the league is trending with respect to revenues in important areas, I think it's really positive that the cap's going up for everybody.
Another guy who's shrewd is Craig Button, because I love that line with the big three and Bouchard and Lupier. And you can bet I'm going to use it, but don't worry. I will credit you, Craig. I have to, because this is on YouTube and everyone's going to see it. They're going to say, that wasn't his idea. It's Craig who brought it up. Awesome stuff, Craig. Have a great one. I appreciate taking the time.
Thank you, Tony. Always a pleasure.
All right, there you have it. The director of scouting for TSN, Craig Button. I love that guy, man. I really do. I hope you liked the podcast tonight. If you did, like it, share it with your friends. Comment SICK, S-I-C-K. Special thanks to our partners and sponsors, Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. They are driven to be different. Also, La Bitte TV, brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bitte TV offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bitte TV, embrace your true nature. And Playground. Are you ready to win $1 million at Playground? Earned entry dailies and return every Sunday for a shot at $500,000 weekly grand prize and $1 million at the grand finale. Playground can make your dreams come true. Visit playground.ca for details. Once again, reminding you all that I, the Cavaleros, the Sick Podcast team, we will be at Playground on Saturday, December the 16th in the PM. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be hosting a live podcast either before or after the game, but most likely after the game, because the Canadiens play the Islanders that night. There will be a couple of televisions, I've been told. There's going to be an area where we can take a look and watch the game. We'll have some hors d'oeuvres. We'll have a beverage while we're playing the slot machines. We'll do all of that at Playground. I look forward to seeing you there. For Agnello, Sammy, Juliana, and Master Control, they're Cavallaro. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, right after the Canadiens and the Kings. We are the Sick Podcast, and I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. La Vida TV, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.